All right, here we are, December 30th, 2025. And as the year winds down, it feels like the whole world is on a knife's edge. Today, we're going to break down a day packed with high-stakes diplomacy, some really escalating conflicts, and a whole series of shocking events that are, well, they're setting the stage for a pretty uncertain new year. So, let's just dive right in. So, here's the plan. We've got three big things to cover today. First up, we'll get into the geopolitical scene, which is getting super tense. Then, we'll look at some major disasters and accidents that have been happening. And finally, we'll wrap up with some big economic and political shifts you need to know about. Okay, first up, geopolitics. And honestly, it feels like the entire world is just holding its breath right now. We're seeing this really weird situation play out. On one hand, you have these super high-stakes peace talks going on. But at the exact same time, military escalations are just firing up all over the globe. And yeah, this right here in Ukraine really shows you what I'm talking about. It's like two completely different stories are being told at once. You got US President Trump saying a peace deal is closer than ever before after he met with President Zelenskyy. But then you look at the reality on the ground, and it's grim. Russian forces are capturing strategic towns like Pokrovsk, and missile strikes are still hitting major cities. So which is And here's the quote from President Trump himself. "We're getting a lot closer. It's something that is being discussed and discussed very seriously." Now, this comes right after that meeting with Zelenskyy and also after a phone call with Vladimir Putin, a call that Russian officials actually described as friendly and benevolent. So, you see, the diplomats are definitely talking, but the fighting just isn't stopping. Okay, so while all that's happening in Europe, let's shift gears and head over to Asia. Because, tensions are flaring up in the Taiwan Strait in a big way. And when I say a big way, I mean it. Look at these numbers. The scale of this Chinese military operation, which they're calling Justice Mission 2025, is just, wow. We're talking 89 warplanes and 28 warships. This is not some small-scale drill. This is a massive show of force. So, what exactly is happening in these drills? Well, they're simulating a complete blockade of Taiwan's most important ports, and they're doing live-fire exercises. But here's the part that's really got everyone talking. They're debuting new autonomous systems. Yeah, we're talking humanoid robots and even weaponized robotic dogs. Beijing is being very clear that this is a warning aimed right at what they call separatist forces, and it's happening right after the U.S. sold more arms to Taiwan. Now, let's pivot to the Middle East, where the language is getting just as intense. During a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Trump had this very direct message for Iran regarding its nuclear program. He said, "If you try and reconstitute that nuclear program, we will knock the hell out of you." I mean, you can't get much clearer than that. That same meeting also touched on the Gaza's ceasefire plan, which seems to have hit a snag. President Trump acknowledged that progress has slowed down, and he basically put the pressure on Hamas, saying they have to disarm quickly, or, in his words, there will be hell to pay. All right, staying with U.S. foreign policy, let's head south to Latin America. There's this U.S. military campaign called Operation Southern Spear. It kicked off back in September, and the stated goal is to go after maritime drug traffickers in the Caribbean and the Pacific. But what started at sea isn't staying at sea. You can see how this thing has escalated pretty quickly. It started in September with strikes on vessels in the Caribbean. Then in October, it expanded to the Pacific. And now, just this month, President Trump has confirmed that they've hit their first land-based facility, believed to be in Venezuela. And, there's a real human cost to all this. The number of people reported killed since this operation began in September, it's over 105. That's from at least 29 different strikes on what the U.S. describes as alleged drug boats. But here's where the story gets really contested. Who were these people who were killed? The Trump administration is firm. They say the targets were narco-terrorists from dangerous groups. But the families of the victims and several governments in the region are telling a completely different story. They're claiming many of the dead were just civilian fishermen who got caught in the middle. And to give you a sense of the international reaction, a top Venezuelan official, Diosdado Cabello, didn't mince words. He called the killings extrajudicial murders. So yeah, this really highlights just how deep the diplomatic rift is over this whole operation. Okay, we're going to shift gears now. Moving away from geopolitics, let's turn to our second section today and talk about a series of really devastating disasters and tragic accidents that have unfolded around the world. And this just gives you a snapshot of the numbers we're dealing with here. In LA, you've got 15,000 residents on lockdown. Across the US, more than 8 million people are under storm warnings. And then you have the tragic loss of life, with 13 killed in Mexico and another 11 in separate crashes in Nigeria and Turkey. It's a lot. So let's do a quick rundown of what's happened. Out in California, a huge gas pipeline exploded, shutting down a major interstate. A monster bomb cyclone is just battering the Northeast and Midwest. In Nigeria, the former boxing champ Anthony Joshua was injured in a car crash that tragically killed 2 other people. And then we have 2 terrible transportation accidents. A train derailed in Mexico, killing 13, and in Turkey, a plane crash killed the Libyan army chief and 7 others. All right, for our last section, let's get into the world of money and politics. Because as the year closes out, we're seeing some serious market volatility and pretty significant political news making headlines. And just look at this. The Iranian currency, the rial, has absolutely cratered. It's hit a record low against the US dollar. And this isn't just some abstract financial news, right? This kind of collapse means hyperinflation, it means shopkeepers protesting in the streets, and it's already led to the head of Iran's central bank resigning. And a couple of final headlines to round things out. In Myanmar, the military junta went ahead with elections that pretty much everyone is calling a sham. And back in the US, even with some big investment deals in the news, tech stocks actually slipped. Investors are pointing to those geopolitical tensions we talked about, and, it's the end of the year, so some folks are just taking their profits and closing out. So, as we close out today's news for December 30th, the picture we're left with is a world that's really under a ton of pressure from all sides. You've got these escalating conflicts, you've got these widespread disasters, and all this economic instability. It's all happening at once, and it's setting a very, very uncertain stage for 2026. It really makes you wonder, what new challenges is the new year going to bring? Thanks for joining us.